Hi, welcome back to the Systems Entrepreneur. I'm Kelly, and if you didn't catch video 1 in this series, make sure you check it in the links below. We are talking about debating business, and I am walking you through what a policy debate looks like at the collegiate level and how we can learn from it for our sales and marketing in online business. So step 2 is, what's the harm? What's the big deal? Because we are naturally people of inertia. And I don't mean like we're couch potatoes. I mean, people don't make big changes unless there's a reason to change. Do you think that people are naturally interested in like getting new health insurance or, moving cross country if there wasn't a reason to do so? Now, sometimes people do things for adventure and that's their reason, but there is a reason. So why would somebody work with your company? Why would they hire you, vet you, incorporate what you do if it didn't give them a benefit? So first, before we get to the benefits, we look at the harms of not acting. Now, as I said in the first video, if you describe the status quo, but there's no harm related, people won't change. If you say the status quo is that Kelly doesn't have a tarantula farm, accurate. What's the harm in that? I don't have a harm in that because I don't want a tarantula. But if you say, Kelly, your website doesn't have this essential feature and it's causing you to lose leads, now there's a harm attached to staying in the status quo. So you need to explain to your clients what horrible things could happen if they don't change. And this is not intended to get them into fear or anxiety or manipulate them, but to give an accurate assessment of what could happen. Like, not just the worst that could happen, but the smaller bad things along the way. It's actually pretty effective and even humane to say, here's somebody who was in your shoes, here's the situation they faced, they didn't act, and here's what happened. This is a consequence that you can avoid. It's so much better than just looking at somebody who had something horrible happen and be like, ha, you suckers. It is really important that you approach this with empathy. Otherwise, you'll just look kind of deranged. And you want to be honest and authentic when you're describing what you're trying to prevent. Because it is hard to act against like, well, bad thing could happen to you. So let's use a medical example here. Let's say that you experience high blood pressure, and we know that high blood pressure can come from a variety of causes. But when you talk to your doctor, they just say, well, if you don't lower your blood pressure in 30 years, you might have a stroke. That's not going to be very compelling. Now, it is a pretty serious consequence of not acting to lower your blood pressure, but it's so far away. How will that help? It is much more effective if a doctor said, your high blood pressure today is causing additional stress that's giving you anxiety or, making you miserable around your family. And in 30 years, as this builds up and it's harder to reverse, it can lead to a stroke, which could take away your speech, your eyesight, your ability to walk. And some people have those consequences a lot sooner. So when you're talking consequences, you're talking harms of not acting, try to mix in a variety of things that are recent and further down the road. Now, we did this in debate, so we would talk about things like our relationship with climate. If we don't act to fix climate change in 50 years, Miami could be underwater. And it was really easy for someone to be like, Miami is a horrible place, who cares? Instead, you could talk about, if we don't start to reverse the effects of climate change, there will be more intense storms in locations that are not prepared from them, which means that your grandparents who you thought were safe are suddenly forced out of their home by a hurricane. And your town, which has never had this happen before, gets leveled by a tornado. And in the next 50 years, the whole planet could become uninhabitable, and all of a sudden there's mass extinction events. So you mix a variety of things that could happen short-term and long-term. One of the things I learned in debate is you don't want to just rely on one harm, like one bad thing. Because if you do, you just might get the judge who's like, Miami sucks, who cares? So you want to have a variety of reasons so that people can really understand and latch on to what compels them. So let's use that blood pressure example. You could say to someone, hey, when you have high blood pressure, it can actually lead to sexual dysfunction. Do you want to like kiss your sex life goodbye? Okay, then you better fix your blood pressure. For other people, they need to understand that if you have something like a stroke, you're not going to be able to drive, especially like if you get right side paralyzed. So kiss your independence goodbye. I hope you don't plan on traveling in retirement. And other people need to understand different impacts. Again, we're not doing this as a fear exercise. We don't want people to be, terrified, but we want people to understand the risks that they take by not acting. And that gets people prepared to understand their options. Imagine doctors did this and they actually talked about the consequences of, smoking, or the consequences of, other dangerous behavior. And then they presented you with your options to start changing that behavior. It would be more compelling if you had a reason to stop. But if they were like, hey, smoking can stop you from running marathons, you're like, I don't care about marathons, then you may not stop smoking. So you have to prove the status quo. This is where you are now, and this is the harm of staying where you are now. And then people are ready for step 3, which is the plan. And the plan is probably my favorite bit, so you're going to want to watch that next. Before you go to video 3, I want you to make a list of at least 25 potential harms that people experience when they don't change the status quo. This doesn't have to be when they don't work with you, but if they don't make substantial changes from the path that they're on, what are the harms that could come to them? And remember to keep these realistic. When I was in debate, our harms were always like global nuclear war and extinction. It's probably not going to be the case if they don't hire an accountant. Thank you for watching. I can't wait to see you in video 3, where we talk about the plan, where your sales magic really comes to play. And make sure you're subscribed so you get that notification as soon as that video is up.